most companies that are coming into the market here, they're often setting up, a team of SDRs and an outbound team. But to be honest, most of them are not being very effective. If I could just tell you a short story.
Delighted to have you back again. I'm really enjoying a series of discussions with Stephen Norman. Welcome back, Stephen.
Great to be here again, John.
Hey, there's a subject that comes up all the time with people I talk to, organisations I have discussions with, as well as experts like you, and that's the old subject of prospecting. And there's a lot of debate going on about cold calling, warm calling, social selling and prospecting through social, and on the list to go, and then ultimately referral selling and so on. What do you make of all that? How do you think, or what do you think is a right way to most effectively prospect?
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of noise about this, John, and most companies that are coming into the market here, they're often setting up, a team of SDRs and an outbound team. But to be honest, most of them are not being very effective. If I could just tell you a short story of a customer I've been working with for the last year. So I got a call from this sales head for a multinational SaaS software company that had set up in the ANZ market a bit more than a year ago. And they'd set up an outbound prospecting team 3 or 4 months before I got this call. I called the guy Sam. That's not his real name, but we'll protect the innocent. And he'd had this team of outbound SDRs, calling into the account base, very enthusiastic. They'd made thousands of calls, sent thousands of emails.
Young, inexperienced guys.
Yes, and honestly achieved very, very poor results out of that. Very few meaningful meetings. When they started, they were driving them more on the activity level, so 100 calls a day, 100 emails a day. Then they started driving appointments, and then when they were whipping them for appointments, they were getting poor quality appointments out of that. And so, this guy had called me, and how could we turn this around? So he was really challenged, and he did make some significant changes and started to turn the results around.
As a result of the discussion with you?
Well, I don't want to take all the credit, but he did do a number of things that were very important. So first off, instead of targeting the whole universe of possible accounts they could sell to, they narrowed it down. So they were targeting about 4,000 accounts. They narrowed it down to 500. And I think this is often overlooked. This is really critical to success. If you think about reducing your target market by 70 or 80% and focusing on the group that's going to be most likely to want your product or get value from your product, of course your hit rate's going to be much better. The second thing was, okay, now we've got this smaller universe to more systematically and more deeply research each of those accounts and each of the key contacts in those
before
accounts.
They do an outreach to them.
Exactly. So actually blocking time each day and each week specifically for research.
I mean, you can over-research, but I agree so much with that most of the people I see doing prospecting and working the numbers forget the research side of it.
Exactly.
And therefore the hit rate goes right down.
And I agree. Let's not over-research, right? But let's research at least for 5 or 10 minutes, okay? And just find some critical information about that person, about that company that you can put into your communication that will show that you care a little bit.
I'd like to even extend that. I mean, if we're talking about larger B2B, then it's not 5 or 10 minutes. It could be a day on a customer.
Or potentially, your mega accounts, right? But we're talking about the first outreach.
Yep.
Okay, I understand your company's in this situation. I understand that you personally have this initiative, right? We can get to that level of detail in our approach. Someone's going to stop and read and take notice of that.
The reality is, and Steve Hall is wonderful at talking about this, the reality is if we can identify one of the uppermost issues in the customer's mind and know what it is before we make the call, then all we have to say is, we know you'll be grappling with this subject. We want to come and talk to you about it.
And exactly, and in our position, from all of our customer experience and experience with our products, we should know what issues customers in our segment are grappling with. So that should be core to our messaging for sure.
But we can, I hate the concept that we've got a value proposition, or I'm going to ring up and quote my value proposition, and it doesn't always hit the mark. If you do that little bit of research, whatever you say is much higher percentage chance of hitting the mark.
Yeah, absolutely. So this always say we will develop out of that research and out of our own knowledge from our own experience, we'll develop a value narrative.
Yep.
Okay, and we'll then use that value narrative. So this is what Sam did with his team, right? Help them develop value narratives for each customer that they can then use in a series of customized messages. So whether that's phone calls, emails, voicemails, connection on social media, there's a value narrative that's consistent and should hit the mark with the customer. Okay, so that was the next thing. And then a big shift was to focus more on outcomes. Okay?
What sort of outcomes in this case?
So getting high quality meetings with our exact target audience.
With some process to measure that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And of course, pipeline. Real pipeline. Of course, we still want to know the higher level, earlier activities and metrics, but less emphasis on that. That's more like, okay, someone hasn't done any activity for a day or two. Okay, what's going on there? Not driving 100 calls a day.
Of course.
There's some basic level activity management, but the big focus on those key outcomes.
Now, one of the issues you mentioned earlier in your story was they had fairly inexperienced people hopping on the phone.
Yes, sure.
I find that disturbing, and so many people are doing it. They're really high performing salespeople, the ones out in the field, and yet they've got these inexperienced guys making the first contact with the customer. And I know John Bedwani, you may know.
Yeah, sure.
John turns that on its head. He says, I want the most experienced guy on the phone. I want them to do the research, pick up the phone with domain expertise and talk to a senior customer. And he gets a really high hit rate with that. Right?
Sure.
And then have that dialogue to start building relationship.
Yes.
Creating value through the conversation on the phone.
Yeah.
It's not just to create a meeting. Now, this applies more to larger B2B, but the concept still is.
No, I agree. And, the concept of bringing in junior people relates to that high call volume, low value call.
Well, just chuck a lot of mud at the wall and hope some sticks.
Yeah, but if you move to a more high quality process, you're not going to attract senior good people into that sort of former role, right? But if you switch it around and make it a high quality, highly researched, highly targeted, crafting high quality messages, you're going to attract and you're going to be able to employ more senior folks to do that for you.
Or you go back to the old method and say our really top salespeople have to do some prospecting themselves and they'll follow the same process.
Yeah, absolutely.
They should be building pipeline for themselves.
Yeah, like in reality, I think everyone's got to have some portion of their time doing this type of prospecting activity.
Now, I'd like to add something on top of all this.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't know whether you finished Sam's story yet.
I'm pleased to say Sam did turn things around.
Good.
And is having a lot of success now.
Joanne Black would kill me if I didn't raise referral selling. And the research that we can be doing, part of it can be, is there any way in which we can identify a referral opportunity for this person? Now, a lot of people ask people, give me a set of referrals. Who do you know that might want one of these widgets? Turn that around. I'm targeting a person. You talked about targeting. Now, these are the people we're going to target. Let's go and do the research on those people. Who do they know that we know
We've got to work back.
and work back.
Agree.
And build that referral, because as I say, you might only be getting 3% or 5% or 6% if you're doing a really good job of doing what you're talking about.
Yes.
If we turn that around to a referral, we're now looking at well above 50 and probably 70%.
Absolutely. That's definitely part of the research. And at least look for accounts that are similar or solve similar problems.
Whole lot of ways
and
of
be able to
approaching.
throw that into the conversation. Makes a lot of sense.
Okay, that's a great discussion. Love it. And we, in the sales masterminds that you're part of, we've got a lot of people that are very good in this area. Tony Hughes talks about combo prospecting, which is all about the sort of stuff we're talking about.
Sure.
So, Stephen, you're bringing some good value to the table. I thank you very much for that.
Pleasure.
Topic. I think we'll all get value from it. Look forward to the next time.
Great to catch up.